Hi, welcome to my Social Action Project, or SAP. I'm going to talk about sex slavery in Tennessee and the greater Nashville area. We're going to see, judge, and act. So let's get started. So let's talk about some articles. The first article that I picked was called Stop Sex Trafficking Now, published by the Huntsville-Madison County Human Trafficking Task Force. And the reason that I picked this article was because it's a lot of facts, a lot of background about sex trafficking, maybe the stuff people don't know. Like, for example, human trafficking is the #2 criminal activity and the fastest growing criminal activity in the world, not just in the state of Tennessee. The reason for that is stuff like drugs, crimes. It can be sold once, it can only be done once, but human beings can be sold time after time, used time after time. In most of the cases, and whether it be in Tennessee or just in general with sex trafficking, 80% of the trafficking victims are females. The younger the girl usually can get the higher price because there's more of a risk involved for the buyer and the seller. Girls who are virgins get the highest prices as well. 2 children are trafficked into sexual exploitation every minute. Trafficking is driven solely by profit. And then a little bit towards the end of the article, it talks about Nashville and how Nashville's become a hot spot because of I-65. It runs through North Alabama and the rest of Tennessee, and that there have been documented cases from girls ages 11 to 17 being sold, providing sex to truck drivers. So that's pretty awful. But the second article I picked was published by the Tennessean, and it's about talking about how there have been several sex trafficking documentaries made in Tennessee in the past couple of years. Because Tennessee has such of a problem with it, it's been coming to light. Like, for example, Tennessee has the #2 most laws against sex trafficking actually in the country. No one really knows how many people are in sex trafficking. That this article made a really big point of that, because it's an underground business and it's not really recorded. A lot of these girls are runaways. So Tennessee's been passing a lot of more anti-trafficking laws to try to make a difference for that, to try to find more girls, trying to stop girls from being that. There have been several documentaries released in the past couple of years filmed in Tennessee, like In Plain Sight or You Have the Power. And this article was really good because they gave a good local view of stuff that was going on with sex trafficking in Tennessee. The third article I picked was published by News Channel 3. It's about Shelby County, where Memphis is, and it was talking about these 2 girls that are gone. They assume they've been in the sex trafficking, but it highlights like the big issue with sex trafficking is that nobody knows like anything about it. It's underground, it's a criminal activity. You obviously don't want to get caught. So like I just said in the second article, nobody knows the number of people in sex trafficking because there's so little known about it. But the thing that I really liked about this article was towards the end, it talks about it's not just a Memphis issue, it's not just a Birmingham issue or a Nashville issue, it's global. And while sex trafficking is really bad in Tennessee, it's also, you have to look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is a whole lot worse than the picture in Tennessee. That yes, this awful thing is happening to so many people in Tennessee, but it's also happening across the globe. So we have to take steps to help it in Tennessee and also help it across the globe. The fourth article that I picked was published by the Tennessee Trafficking Resources Center, and it's just basically a big article about statistics. Like this year alone, there have already been, as of March 31st, there's already been 18 reported human trafficking cases. Then the also thing about this article was the statistics. There have been over 1,400 calls to 911 related to sex trafficking since 2007. However, there have only been 351 cases that have sprung from those calls. So a lot of those calls either go unanswered, don't get looked into, kind of dissolve maybe from pressure from the pimps of the girls. And so I think that's what really interested me about this article was kind of, you hear about it in the other articles, you know, like it's unknown, there's not a lot being done for these girls, but until you actually look down and see the numbers, you don't really get to see the amount of people that are being affected of this right here in our own state. Alright, so the last article I picked was, the title is Sex Trafficking of Minors Remains a Dirty Secret and agents, officers, and victim supporters want to bring it into light. It was published by Nashville Scene about a year ago. And the thing I really liked about this article was it combines facts and like a personal testimony of a girl that was a victim of sex trafficking. And some of the key things from this article that I really found like moving or impactful regarding sex trafficking were the fact that the reason that Nashville and Tennessee is such a hotbed for sex trafficking is because three major intersect within the city limits of Nashville, which makes the ideal location to funnel people through a reverse underground railroad. Also, a thing about this article that I could really connect to was it talked about 4 Nashville massage parlors that have been hit recently in the last year as not as underground, sex trafficking locations where girls were being sold to guys supposedly getting massages. And actually, one of them, ABC Massage and Golden Massage, 2 of them actually, ABC Massage on Franklin Pike and Golden Massage on Abbott Martin Road, I've driven past almost every day of my life. It's on my way to school. They're both on my way to school. Another line that really hit me from this article was a girl's talking about being sex trafficked, and she goes, "He took me from state to state selling me." So this girl ended up in Nashville, but Nashville was her 3rd or 4th state that she's been sex trafficked into. Another key part of this article, it talked about the legal process of sex trafficking and how it's changing, how people are now going to attack not just the people that are buying the girls, but also the people that are selling. Now buyers are also being prosecuted, sellers are being prosecuted much more severely. It's been changed from a misdemeanor to a felony, so it's a lot more jail time, it's a lot more serious of a charge. And this article was just really good about that, seeing from different points of view of different girls. So now that we've talked about the articles, let's get going with some facts. So 10 facts about sex trafficking. The first fact is that 3 major interstates intersect within the city limits of Nashville, which is the reason that it's such an ideal location to funnel people through this reverse underground railroad. It comes from the article about Nashville Scene, and it's just kind of going further into the geography of Nashville, how Nashville's proximity is so close to Atlanta, Chattanooga, Memphis, all those other really big sex trafficking areas that they can all come together in Nashville because they're all connected by the interstate system. Another fact about sex trafficking in Nashville is the Kohlmeyer case was marked the first time that a buyer of sex was found guilty of sex trafficking in Tennessee, and that happened fairly recently, and that's just kind of a big step in the right direction for sex trafficking, and how just 5 years ago the crime was a misdemeanor and now again today it's a felony. Those are the right steps that need to be taken, and that fact kind of highlights the progress that's being made towards sex trafficking. The third fact, that's also from the Nashville Scene. The third fact is just a general fact about sex trafficking, just kind of show the power and the weight that sex trafficking has in the society today, and it's that $150 billion are generally estimated is generated annually from sexual trafficking activities. And again, these are estimates because we really have such little idea of how many girls are being sex trafficked, how often, where. Fourth fact is that sex trafficking is driven solely by profit for the most part, and that these traffickers will recruit from all areas, schools, malls, different locations. That plays into the next fact is that sex trafficking, a common misconception about sex trafficking is that it is just runaways, and it's just these poor, girls that have no other options. Sex trafficking really transcends social and geographic boundaries. If you look at the reported cases of girls that have been found from sex trafficking, it's not just those types of girls. It's types of girls that were types of girls from all over, different demographics, different, immigrants play a big part in sex trafficking. Girls from rich neighborhoods, girls from poor neighborhoods, runaways, not runaways. A fifth fact is that, one of the reasons that Nashville has so many cases, what experts believe, why Nashville has such a sex trafficking problem, is that there's a lot of events that drive tourists to town. And like, for example, like the Music City Convention Center, there's a lot of conventions here. There's, a lot of music festivals, a lot of different stuff like that. There's a lot of people that migrate and come to Nashville for a lot of different reasons, and with those type of people, they bring sex trafficking. There's also a lot of we're also the only state with a rural county, that has over 100 reported cases of minor sex trafficking. And that just has to do with all the different people that come through Nashville. Nashville has a lot of different people coming through for different reasons, whether it be jobs, music, the music industry, and so that plays into it. The next fact is that Nashville is part of a 4-human city trafficking loop that includes Birmingham, Memphis, and Atlanta. So all these cities that have sex trafficking problems are also very close, very accessible, like I said before, because of the highway, and so that they're all able to be, connected and to form this giant loop. The next fact goes back onto the one where I said we're the only state with a rural county with over 100 reported cases of minor sex trafficking. And in 2011, we had 4 counties, not necessarily all of them are rural, but we had 4 counties, Coffee, Davidson, Knox County, and Shelby County, with reported 100 or more sex trafficking cases. Not necessarily all of those were prosecuted or looked into further, but that's over 400 cases in just 4 counties in 4 different areas of Tennessee. The next fact is that in just last year, in 2015, there were 69 prosecuted cases of sex trafficking versus 262 calls about sex trafficking to like 911 or to like a hotline or something like that. So that kind of just shows again, there's very limited, there's a very big difference between the amount of people that are that reported are struggling with this versus the actual people that get it fixed. And then the last fact is that there's a sex trafficking problem, but the ever-growing thing is that sex trafficking with children, sex trafficking with minors, and that's because they're often victimized because predators offer them nice things like clothes or money, and they get, they see that kind of lifestyle and they're like, oh, well, we could do that, and then they get into the cycle and they get trapped and they get tricked, and then it's just really hard for them to get out of that. Alright, so 3 personal testimonies that are from people that have been involved with sex trafficking. The first one comes from, her name was not listed in the article because of protection reasons regarding because her traffickers are still at large, but it was a girl that was found in a hotel room in Nashville, Middle Tennessee, and she was found chained in the basement to a pole and just left there until her sex traffickers would just leave her there until they came and got her. And she just said that some of her personal statements were, he chained me to a pole in a basement, I was there for a while. He sold me to a gang member who made me wear heels, made me wear lingerie to clubs, he made me prostitute myself. She later goes on to talk about being taken into a room and raped up and drugged, and then she'd wake up and be raped by everybody in the room. So this is beyond brutal, the treatment of these girls and the different things that they have to go through within the sex trafficking community. And you can hear it all from different people, and you read all the statistics and stats that you want to hear, but until you really get to hear what these people have to say about it and what they had to go through, this girl said that to be sold, they would have tickets like you use in carnivals, and every time she would be bought, they'd have to give out a ticket to the person, she was literally being sold using tickets. The second personal testimony is from Sheila Skipkins McLean. She's also a victim of sex trafficking. She now works with the anti-sex trafficking organization in Nashville. She just talks about how she went through the same thing. She was being sold state to state, just to various men every other night. And then finally in 1966, she was brought, 1996, she would have been probably very old. In 1996, she was brought to Nashville, and she got arrested for a drug habit, And then once she got out, she was able to get rid of sex trafficking, and she got to an outreach program that she now works for. She got her degree, and she just talks about how, you know, she was sold from different state to state, but then when she's a product of like the good side of rehabilitation, and how now she's able to go back and give back, and how she does a lot of in-service houses. She connects with community partners. She has therapy classes, jobs, education support groups, and how she just tries to impact the community in the positive way that she was impacted. And the third personal testimony is from the video that we saw at the before my video, was about the woman Annie or Anna. Her personal testimony about what it was like, how her parents kind of ended up pushing her into this, and then she got stuck, and it took her, you know, she got busted for prostitution, how she's trying to put her life back together, and she stood up to her traffickers, but now they're out of jail and they could come to her, and she's had to move away from Tennessee. She's in hiding. And so just stuff like that, just the plight of these girls and the dire situation that they've been put in, is what's really like amazing about sex trafficking, and like all the bad that it causes. Alright, so what are the root causes of sex trafficking? Like, why is it grown into such the industry that it is? Well, after reading, I came up with a couple. It obviously stems from prostitution, one of the world's oldest professions. Just the example set by prostitution, kind of the precedent, like the way that it's done, is helped pave the way for sex trafficking. Secondly, what I think is the biggest factor in the rise of sex trafficking now is the use of the internet. Now, before it had to be face-to-face interaction, you had to go to a place, but now you can get on sites like blackpage.com, and you can find a girl from almost any age, any location, and have her within 30 minutes. Well, that's the same amount of time it takes to order a pizza. You can find a girl. And that's where a lot of people can be caught on the internet, but it also is very easy to hide on the internet, to disguise yourself. And so the internet is definitely one of the main root causes for the rise in sex trafficking. Another factor would have to be economic factors. It's a lot of risk for the person buying, a lot of risk for the person selling. A good amount of money is involved in sex trafficking, and it's quick money. It's easy money for the pimps and the people selling these girls, because all they have to do is get these girls, and they treat them very poorly in very bad conditions. So it's not like their profit is being deducted by having to treat these girls to like very high standards. So it's quick, easy money for these guys, and so that's why it's grown into such. They see the money, they're like, okay, let's do that. It's going to get us a lot more money. The third thing that I think has led to a rise in sex trafficking is cultural factors. It's not in our society. Now laws are being more and more, legislation is being passed, but at first it wasn't something that was heavily prosecuted. It wasn't something that it just turned into a felony. It was a misdemeanor beforehand. There's been a lot of things that have helped take away this cultural cause as it's become more and more apparent. So those are definitely 4 very big root causes for sex trafficking today. Alright, so the first quote comes from Reverum Novarum on the Condition of Labor by Pope Leo XIII, and the first quote is, "If therefore any injury has been done to or threatens either the common good or the interests of individual groups, which injury cannot in any other way be repaired or prevented, it is necessary for public authority to intervene." So that relates to this because there's something that's being done to the interest of a group, these women that are being sex trafficked, and the common good and their dignity is being taken away, and it's injury that they cannot prevent, or they cannot repair because it's being forced upon them. So it's in the public authority to intervene. It's in the public's duty to intervene. The second one is a lot more direct. It's also from Reverum Novarum, and it's, "The following duties concern rich men and employers. Workers are not to be treated as slaves. Justice demands that the dignity of the human personality be respected in them. Gainful occupations are not a mark of shame to man, but rather of respect, as they provide him with an honorable means of supporting life. It is shameful and inhumane, however, to use men as things for gain, and to put no more value on them than what they are worth in muscle and energy." Obviously, men, women, same thing. Like this quote just said, workers are not supposed to be treated like slaves, sex slaves, so obviously that's bad. They shouldn't be used as objects much more than their muscle or energy, like what they're making these young women do. We should respect the lives of workers and the fact that they get to support themselves in an honorable way. So that's how that one relates back to sex trafficking. The third quote is on the development of peoples from Pope Paul the 11th. And the first quote is, "Economics and technology have no meaning except from the human person whom they should serve. And the human person is only truly human in as far as of master's own acts and judge of their worth. One is author of one's own advancement, in keeping with the nature which was given to human beings by the Creator." The economics and technology part has to go along with the internet, why the internet is using to actually hurt women in these cases of sex trafficking rather than help them. And economics is how sex trafficking is all purely for profit, and how the profit is forcing us to lose sight of their dignity. And again, we should be masters of our own acts and judgments of our own worth. The fourth quote is also from On the Development of Peoples, by Pope Paul VI, not the 10th. There can be no progress towards the complete development of individuals without the simultaneous development of all humanity in the spirit of solidarity. So basically, we as a society cannot move together and develop if we don't respect and help develop the poorer people, the lesser people. It's kind of like the saying, a chain's only as strong as its weakest link. We together as a society won't advance if we allow another segment of our society to go down so far and to not be able to help themselves. The last quote is by Pope Paul VI, again, in his document, A Call to Action. And this is about kind of what the church is supposed to do, so all of us are the church, the body of the church. The church directs her attention to these new poor, the handicapped and the maladjusted, the old, different groups of those on the fringe of society, in order to recognize them, help them, defend their place and dignity in a society hardened by competition and attraction of success. So in some of these cases of sex trafficking, these girls are attracted to this kind of a lifestyle, because there's a lot of money, it's a lot of what they perceive as glamour towards it, and then once they actually get into it and they see what it's actually like, and then they're caught in that cycle. That's who the church needs to direct their attention to, are these women and these young girls that are caught, and they're the new poor. They're all different groups, but they are on the fringe of society, and they're in trouble, and we need to take them from the fringe of society and bring them back in together with the rest of us. Okay, so what Catholic social teaching principles are present in sex trafficking? You could really make the case for mostly all of them, but I picked 4. I picked, obviously, common good. It's for the common good of these girls that we get them out of this situation. It's for the common good of the community that we don't have people at risk for this. The second one, life and dignity of human person, also pretty self-explanatory. We have these girls that have dignity. They have the right to life, the right to a life that they want to live, not a right to a life where they're being forced into having sex with strange men and being sold against their will. So the fact that we get them the dignity that they deserve, Imago Dei, made in God's image. The third one, option for poor and vulnerable. I think that's, one of the biggest ones is that obviously these girls are poor and vulnerable. If they had the choice, they wouldn't be doing any of this. I don't think any of them would pick to be sold and used as sex slaves. And that's our duty as people that are free and not caught in that repetitive cycle and pattern, that we need to exercise the option for the poor and vulnerable and help them because they can't help themselves. And then the last one, dignity of the worker and the right of worker. This is the girl's job. It's probably not the job they want to have, and it's not the job that they should have. And as they have the right to work, they have the right to make a living, but not in this way, not with such little dignity and by doing the stuff that they're forced to do, it's against their will. You know, if they don't want to do that as work, they shouldn't have to, and that comes back to their dignity and their rights as a worker. So I think really all the Catholic social teachings, principles regarding sex trafficking all come back to, you know, the fact that, you know, they all have dignity and that they all are being forced to do something, I think most of them against their will, and that they really have no option to get out of it. They're forced, they're stuck in this, you know, cycle. They're stuck in sex trafficking. And I think it's not just one Catholic social teaching principle that we can apply here. It's a culmination, it's a mixture of all of them, because it's going to take all of them to fix different parts of this issue. Alright, so there are a lot of organizations, nonprofits that help sex trafficking. 3 of the ones that I found that were some of the biggest and some that have seem to have a lot of footholds in the sex trafficking community is the one that my sister talked about, End Slavery Tennessee. It's obviously, you know, works as rehabilitation for these girls, and then for also helping, you know, bust like places that do sex trafficking. So it sort of has both ends. Another nonprofit is Thistle Farms. You know, it helps with the rehabilitation with these women, not just sex trafficking, prostitution as well. You know, getting them out of these situations and helping them build back up their lives. And the last one that I found was, it's not as big as the first 2, but it was the Community Coalition Against Human Trafficking, CCAHT. It's in Tennessee. And the thing that really interested me about this one, it deals with more like legislature and helping these girls in court and stuff like that, helping them get legal power to maybe prosecute their, you know, traffickers or these people who have done great wrongs by them. But the thing that I really liked about this one was it was started, I mean, obviously the other 2 were started by people that cared, but this one was started by, and it's run by, just normal, like, everyday people. Like, this was a community in Tennessee that said, you know, we have a problem, we need to take up and take a stand against this, and they ended up forming it, and it's grown into this big organization. And so all 3 of these organizations, you know, they do a lot of the same thing. The reason I chose them to talk about for my 3, you know, nonprofits were that they, you know, they're well known, they have a lot of access. You know, we had the End Slavery Tennessee guy came and showed us that video with the Seek Justice bands. And so these are 3 organizations that do a lot of good. They also have opportunities for people our age or people of really any age to get involved and to help with this issue. So that's, you know, I think 3 organizations that are really good representations of the work being done against sex trafficking. Alright, so what are 3 meaningful justice solutions that we can do to stop sex trafficking? Number 1, we need to have better rehabilitation programs for the women that are already being sex trafficked and that are recovering, and we need to have programs to help prevent it from the get-go. Another way is stricter laws in courts, like continuing what we're doing with having it turn from misdemeanor to a felony, longer sentences, you know, make it a way heavier punishment for doing it so that it deters people from doing it. And then the third one should be stricter laws and ways to protect the women that do come out against it. A lot of them, the reason that sex trafficking, not a lot is known about it, is because there are, once the women come out, they're scared because they are putting themselves at a huge risk, taking on these powerful guys that are gonna, you know, can come back and, you know, maybe hurt them, like the lady that we saw in the video, Annie, who they had to disguise her identity because the people that she turned in were already out of jail again. And so just ways to keep people in jail, protect the girls, and stop this from happening again. Alright, so lastly I'd like to just close with a little bit of a conversation with my sister Maddie, who's home from college. Maddie's volunteered with a anti-sex trafficking organization for 2 years. So I just wanted to kind of have her talk about like some of the things that she's done, some of her experience, and just some of the stuff that she's encountered with her volunteer work.
Well, the organization I work with is called End Slavery Tennessee. They may come to Father Ryan to talk to the class because they did when I was a junior in high school.
Yeah, they did.
But basically, they just provide care for victims. Well, that was their original goal, was to provide care for victims and to raise awareness. But recently, they've also been working with the police in uncovering human trafficking in the area. Like massage parlor that was busted across the street from Centennial High School, that was my group that alerted the police. And it's like a really long process because you have to provide evidence and then get a warrant before they can actually go in and rescue the girls in there. But that's pretty much what the organization does. And there is a lot to do because Nashville is a hub for human trafficking, contrary to what people might think. But it's because it's very easily accessible from Memphis, Chattanooga, and East Tennessee, and it's not that far from Atlanta, where a lot of human trafficking occurs. And so a lot of people don't really realize how much of it is happening in Nashville. I'm sure you all have heard this, but the Red Roof Inn right off of 65, right next to Father Ryan, there was a huge human trafficking scandal over there. It was a couple years ago, but the more recent ones, there were 2 in Cool Springs last year that the police actually went in and rescued people. But it's a big problem in Nashville.
All right, so the last part of ACT is the reflection on why I chose this topic. I chose this topic because I found it was kind of interesting, not like the actual sex trafficking, but kind of the legal aspects and the process and the things that these girls go through. I thought that was kind of interesting and just kind of like unbelievable, especially like the stories like of the girls that get out of it and how they're able to just completely have their lives do a 360. I just thought that was just like unbelievable. And there's like plenty of ways to get involved, volunteering at these nonprofits and different things like that. And as a community, we just have to stand with solidarity towards this issue, and we have to stand together to make an impact and to stop sex trafficking, especially at our home in Tennessee.